Right, so we are going to kind of center in our hips into the mid span of the bolster. You want to kind of plunk down and notice how the weight down of your seat kind of reflects the how it kind of spills into your, mostly your lower limbs. Not many of us consider this affecting our upper. So what I want you to place in your attention is your feet basically stretching in front, because that's where they're going to likely want to go. And when your belt is around your hips, reach, bending your knees, the belt around the feet, slide the belt so it's right into the midsection, maybe lower towards your heels. And then I want you to tighten the belt down so that you have the belt around, hugging the hips. So it feels kind of like you're getting a little bit of a hip squeeze. You can define it by tightening the belt. But when you do define that, see if you can have a little bit of a knee selection of softening, kind of soften those knees. Now, as you grasp onto a block, you're going to plunk it down on the top of your thighs. And then as you hold gradually your muscular engagement on the block, I want you to sense the upper body, lean back, and then bring your elbows to the sides as the block is picked up towards your heart. And then gradually lift up that block and work towards the pressure of the feet in the belt, but mindful of softening the knees. As the arms go up, keep it soft with the elbows, and then bring your hands behind your head, of course, holding that block unless you feel like getting rid of it. It's always up to you. No one will hear if you drop your block, except your home. And then as you move your hands to keep pressing into the block, can you bring your elbows in? And then feel that pressure of your elbows moving towards your head. And spend a few collected moments here on engaging in the ritual of expanding and contracting your abdomen when you're sitting upright. Okay, we're going to take a quick exchange here with the pose. So block goes up and then onto the floor. This is pre getting too much hip flexor-ish. So you're going to hold onto the belt, and I want you to go ahead and slide the left foot out of the belt so that left foot is on the inner side of the right leg. And then hold the belt with both hands and push the right foot out. I kind of like this action because the belt slides up, and then I feel like I'm doing a little bit of this inner engagement through the inner thigh. And then your left foot could be close to your bolster. It could be kind of semi-close, whatever's comfortable for you. But take a block besides the right leg, right on the side, and then lower down your hand onto that block, but reach through the right hand so the block is besides your lower right leg, and sweep the left arm out, up, and then feel if you can lean into the experience of that expansion, or maybe a kind of detailed lengthening, lift and lengthen through the side beam and the ribs. Everything kind of oscillates here in this left side. So play with movement, turning, shifting, reaching. Yeah, so kind of welcome yourself. If I didn't welcome you each, welcoming you each to your practice right now. And we're really emphasizing here this kind of alignment exploration. Let your head turn down towards your right leg so that you can feel the kind of embodiment of moving your neck, trying to release that upper back. And then as the ribs kind of flare open, you'll bring the left arm back and slide the block, arm, core up. And then I want you to take the moments to kind of explore how you would get into the second side on your own direction. So you know that you're going to try to get that left foot in the belt, the right knee bending, the left leg outing. And how far you push the left leg out is really purely up to your body range, right? So we're using the belt to explore, but also to kind of identify where our strengths are in our midsection. So if feeling kind of stuffy in your middle, like pulling things in tighter is helping you, feel if you can use that block besides your left leg to slide out, and the belt doesn't have to get tighter, but you might like that. And then sweep that right arm over the side. Okay, the right leg might need a block under it. Okay, that's helpful to have some support below the leg, but feature the reaching and the kind of suppleness of when you lean into a pose, not the body, but you're kind of relying on the floor right now and your props to support your body to loosen up. When you're leaning in, where does that length, right, start to move from? Is it right in the center of your ribs? Is it from your low back? Your right arm could be resting behind you. Turn your head down to that left leg. These are all kind of patterns of alignment that we're working in the beginning. And then slide the block back to the bolster. And then what we'll do is take our belt, unbuckle it, slide it so your two arms, right? So not just the hands, although they're pretty helpful here. Have a feeling of pulling, okay? It's interesting when you are left without the arm engagement sitting up, you know, where the back muscles respond. So encourage you to get a feel of this pulling and leaning back so you are aligning from hips to shoulders to ears. And then as you pull yourself forward, go for a very deep back line stretch. So I'm going to walk the hands, shift them farther down towards your feet, and get that belt a little higher on the ball of the foot. I know some of you might already have your belt up that high, but kind of feel if your feet can touch the belt, the inside, the back side, well, the underside of your foot, and really make connection with flesh to belt, and then belt to flesh, right? So that's really disciplining your pose. And you can go further and downwards, but it's up to you. If that's kind of a feature that you're eager and anticipate going towards and it feels good, can you blend that with flexion of the spine, right? Right now I'm in spine extension, right? So now I'm going to work with a little bit of that flexion. So I'm going to let the weight of my head just tilt down. So really pulling, and you can stay with your spine tall and not be in flexion. If that doesn't feel right for you and you know that's not the blend of movement that's going to balance you. Okay, now we're going to use the belt, pull the belt closer towards your waist, pull your feet in, your knees point up, and just stay for a moment with the lift of the rib cage, okay? And then you'll bring the belt on the inside of the knees, and you'll pull your feet, and now your feet are going to turn towards sole to sole, and you're going to walk your hands farther down towards your feet and pull your feet up to your bolster. Well, maybe parked nearby. So now that you have feet parking, enough room for your feet to park, hold on to the belt. This is an important part here, is that we're using the arms and they're not dropping forward. So use the elbows to bring them by your sides or back, right? So they're kind of wings moving back. And then as you maintain that awareness, just feel the arms. We'll Baddha Konasana many times today, but we're not going to Baddha Konasana pushing down or bobbing Konasana right now. No bobbing Konasanas. Bobbing angles would be that turn. Okay, now as I bring the belt away, I'm going to take a moment and slide my feet forward, okay? And just kind of feel what awareness slides into the legs here. So take some blocks besides your legs and then lean forward. Take the blocks a little farther forward, lean. Let the back muscles have a nice blend of extension and flexion. So it's like you're doing cat-cow with the back muscles. You're rounding your back, chin towards chest. And we're trying to inhale, move the heart forward, lift up the gaze. Exhale, round your back, chin to chest. Last time, inhale, chest centers forward. And then slide your blocks besides your bolster. And hands on bolster, you're going to bring your knees to point back up to center. Your feet a little wider, actually go almost as wide as your sticky mat. And then lengthen down so the elbows drop down to the bolster. And you're going to let the body swish the knees side to side. Well, I guess you're not letting your body, but you're guiding the direction of the knees swiveling. So one thing I like to feel in the sense of my pelvis is this movement, this cross fiber stretch from my back of my pelvis to the front and the sideline of my leg. So the wider the stance might improve your odds at getting that to lengthen, but it depends on how it feels and coordinates. So give a few more moments of that cross fiber motion. I like to keep it so the elbows are pretty heavy, and they are definitely required to have some solid pressure. Okay, now as you bring your knees back centered, you're going to slide your feet in, and we'll get to our first true restorative. So we're going to keep our back of our waistband on the bolster and get a block. Walk the feet a little wider than hips distance. Lower your head to your blankets, okay? And then as you feel this mountain brook pose, which means there's quite a few kind of rocks here, right? With fluidity moving through as far as the knees, the pelvis, the ribs, the chest. So I want you to use a block and place it under the back of your pelvis. So I'm going to walk my feet a little wider, lift up my hips, slide the flat block right next to my bolster. And then you might be scooting your shape a little farther away versus farther back, so that there's almost like you're using the block to kind of tack onto the pelvis, and then it gets a little bit of, it gives a little more slack. So I want you to try to find, how can I get some slack in this low back tundra? Now we take the supported bridge and we're going to move into getting our belt, getting our sand. Take a sandbag first up to your core and on the top of your thighs. And two options for this one today to start. You can start with the Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees out, but try to keep that sand so it's right at the lid of the hip, the frontal hip bone, right? So it doesn't fall on the floor. So you might start here, and then in a few moments, you will eventually bring your knees to point up and stretch your legs down and move your sand to the thigh beam. Okay, some of you might start here first with a supported bridge. So those that want to start with the supported cobbler's pose, knees out, feet together first, go there, and then eventually make it here. And we'll all join with the belt overhead. Hold wide, generous, and let that spatial opportunity be explored even in your back flesh. So this might mean you wander your belt a little bit side to side and stretch that side waist. Just kind of watch out for what's around you, but this could feel kind of nice as I hold the belt and I doing a little bit of that kind of windshield wiper, but with my upper body, using my belt. Okay, so keep onto your back. I'll show what that is from an awareness point of seeing where my arms are. So I'm moving a little side to side when I'm on my back. Of course, I've got the wall space that I kind of drop into, but you might be able to get your hands a little closer in, but still get this side tissue to lengthen. Yes. Okay, sand is important. Now, as you layer into that fullness of breath, let your eyes close, let go of the belt. Find that it was useful to bring circulation to your upper body, okay? So when the arms are releasing open and your legs decide to be in either Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees out, or legs straight down, you can try your variations responsibly. Make sure that you're propping yourself substantially. And then with that secondary emphasis, which is primary for most of us, is the breathing. So with the eyes restful and the face calming down, influence the movement of the diaphragm. As you inhale, you'll feel the abdomen flows down and up. And then as you strengthen that correspondence with the diaphragm on the exhale, the belly naturally falls towards the spine. And then the diaphragm ascends up towards the heart. So following the tone of the practice right now, closing the eyes, centering into a still point. Now, at some point, you might decide to move one of the blankets back and utilize a little bit lower height under your neck. And that's all dependent on how comfortable you are with the back. And so if your back is feeling fine, there's no tension building, or you're trying to resolve, then you might be better suited to have less height under your neck, just to avoid that cervical flexion game. And you might find some days it just feels really nice to have a couple, low height blankets under your head for this shape. So let the arms have that horizontal lateral movement property to support the ribs, spanning and widening and improving that lung function, right? Keeping the awareness that this would be the support of lung function versus arms kind of gripping and pulling into the center line, so feeling expansive. So we're going to do a little bit of kind of play with that idea, that rib motion, but also bring it into eventually, right, down into the hip layers, the fibers of the thighs, all those things. It's like, what do you want from your practice? You might want feeling some more inner space. Right? That might be a place you could travel through a little bit without any worries. Okay, give us a few more breaths. If feet are turning out, take the feet wider. That's important to notice. If you widen the feet, it's likely going to change the feeling around the knees. One knee may get a little lower than the other, and that's something to just simply notice. With the sand weight, do you feel more weight on one hip than the other hip? And then as we start to move our sand aside, keep it near your left side. And as you bring the knees to outward pattern with the feet together and knees out in cobbler's pose, kind of sense the directional awareness in the inner thigh. And you might go back and repeat that extension of the leg down and through the heel and kind of play with that, shifting your feet together, your knees out, your legs straight down. Take a couple more seconds here or stay with the cobbler's pose. And then feel when the feet are together, what that kind of brings up into the thighs, right? It starts to stimulate that flow of circulation. We won't call this more of a lymphatic support because we're not inverting, we're in a mild inversion. But it's more of like getting these front hip bones balanced. Right, that's the key here. They're not wonky because you got a block underneath you. Now, as you bring your knees to point up, the only way out is to safely and easily is to roll to one side, right, versus trying to pop up. So avoid popping up, right? Try to roll out. So you're going to roll left, and then as you roll left, you're going to move the block away. And if you've got a ball, you're going to roll to the left, and you're going to start to go into your kind of assignment of side sage, block or ball on the inside of that right leg, completely up to you. But when we get here, I want you to take that sand near you first, but feel where that right arm, once your head is on your blanket, can move open and can reach over the overhead, right? And so notice your range with this reach. Does it feel like you're kind of in space without a support? And if that's the case, you're going to find a block, put it overhead. Be cautious here of the shoulder, the whole side band here that maybe feels kind of stripped and heated from this exchange. So we're going to add our sand, and that way we can kind of bulk up the muscle on the inside of the arm, change from that flowing overhead to some muscular inner, right, the bicep, the head of the bicep. So I'm going to take the sand, I'm going to try it lengthwise today. So kind of on the whole side beam, just kind of see how that goes. Maybe visualize your spine. I don't know what your spine visualization is, but heck, why not visualize something about it, or that it's inside you, and good thing. So we could have a whole session on that, huh? Spine visualizations. So as we have our sand fairly high up and advanced on the rib head, we're going to let the weight get sideways and then move that right arm over. The higher the sand is, the likelihood it's going to feel safer and more balanced in your arm. Okay, and safer might be the awkward description there on that one, but when I reach with my breath and I try to get the breath in my side body, that kind of alleviates some of the discomforts, right, that come from basically getting your body in a new range of motion, which is pretty much what we're up to in this class, is offering explorations in your body's range of motion, your daily ranges, and hydrating the tissues, right, getting them more mobilized, hydrated, nourishment to the structure and the organs, massaging through the inside. So besides trying to sell that, we've got our left arm underneath, and it's pretty much not going to do much. It's just going to be there as a base. And notice if you're using it as a base or you're still holding on. If the right arm gets tingly or it falls asleep, it's probably a good idea to get out of that reach with the arm. Either rest it beside you on your sand, on your side body, or rest it on your left arm. Perfectly fine. That might feel good for some of you that are working with some shoulder stuff, having the hand down next to the left arm. Okay. So with the pelvis in motion, can you feel, this like 10% of cat-cow that you would do, just a very small blip on your radar of movement of the pelvis. Very small and calculated. And then just let the body weight be, closing your eyes, arm overhead or beside you. See if you can actually be in the pose. Breathing in through the ribs. Expansive and relaxive. Good. Now with the arm overhead starting to glide open or bending that elbow outwards. Take a slow breath. See if you can let the breath gradually help the skin rise. Little skin toner. And then as I start to shift my sand, I'm going to see if I can let it kind of fall off on its own accord. And then I want us to take on moving towards crocodile pose. It's a really satisfying back pose. So as we turn to our left, let's hope that means easeful back, okay? Turn to left. I'm going to move the ball. And as you rotate, I want you to rotate so that you start with a version of, the bolster seemed awfully heavy. Well, a sandbag is going to make it feel very concrete. So you're going to reach your ribs a little forward, so you might be facing towards the back of your mat, I'm assuming, but it's just two pose patterns. So it's feeling this arch of the back. But what I want you to do is lower down. Now there's space here between your belly button, right? It might be on the bolster, and your chest. So when I lower down my forehead on the blankets, what I want you to do is, if you have any hardware on your face, to remove that. And then when you move down with your face, you might need a blanket on the top to be rolled up a little bit higher, right? So its forehead is onto the blanket. So I got my blanket across and I've got one rolled a little bit higher. It could be just in a ball. And then you want that so your forehead, your frontal lobes have a little bit of touchdown to relax the brain. Now, the knees are apart. That's really important here. Your knees are apart. They're not in a cobbler's pose pattern, but they are away from each other. And then as the weight of your head lowers, can you kind of smoosh around with your core? I know it feels like if there's anything in your belly, it is being pushed to the back right now. And breathing, belly pushes into the bolster. Massage the organs. If this is too compressive, soften it up. Right, you can use more blankets. You can slide your hips farther back, so it's a little bit of a softer pose for your belly. Right, you can slide a little farther back, so it's not so much of a burden in your lower tummy. And then it's on the ribs. So the key here is to release our back. Crocodile pose. Right, don't stir the floor of the ocean right now. Take a few moments, or the river, whatever it is. Take a few moments here where the back of the pelvis and the lower back soften. You kind of feel like you're loafing it on this pose. Okay, now as the hands slide between the props, you're going to come back to that up dog. So use the bolster in front of the belly line. Very important that you use the bolster to support that edge and contour of the waist. Lengthen, lift up the heart without pushing deeper into the hands. Try to lift up the chest. And then as you come down, feel if you can do that pattern without your hands touching the floor. So you can have your hands down, but not forcing them down. You can make small fists, but we're strengthening that lower back. Okay, now as I roll into my right hip, I'm going to take side sage on the right hip. Now, your knees don't have to be bending on these side sage poses. What you could also have your legs a little more in that straight line, even the right leg here. So depending on where you're at with your side, we're getting to the second side sage now. You're going to take the blankets, maybe keep them how they just were if you like that, or try it back to the 2 quarter folds. And then when you kind of inch into it, it's nice to notice how the ribs are gradually starting to get kind of manipulated and the hydration of the tissues, right? So this is going to move into our hips, our shoulders, everything spans from the center. So we take a sandbag to the exterior. Okay. You had some awareness on the first side, the flow of the arm. Okay. So I haven't changed the opportunity, just abbreviated on this side because we're getting faster through this side. But same work applies. The right leg can soften. You don't have to bend the knee harshly. And you might take a clue from where these practices kind of have been moving towards more of a movement therapeutic range is like what's under the pose that kind of helps us get into our body, right? We use the pose to get into our body, not our body to get into the pose, right? That's kind of my favorite essential awareness. So whether you end up thinking, oh, do I have side sage? Does this look right? Is this like that on the screen? Or am I doing it? What does the book look like? The idea would be I'm working on the side space in the body, and that will affect the back and the front quite a bit when you're in real time, which is maybe walking around right after a session. So use the session as much as you could like body work, or, it's maybe not a massage, but use it like you are trying to evoke an experience of really spanning and getting in there, and then use the breath to kind of scrub through it. That's what I like, is then the breath. And I'm on my own, I'm solo. I know that you're out there, there's a collective consciousness now, but as far as not being a massage, right, you know that you're pretty solo on the movement, decision making. So that's kind of nice. And the props can be the touch, right? They can be a piece of that. So with a few more moments here, just feel that left arm now. It could be down on your right arm, could be down on your side. It's likely a little different than the first side with range or sensation under the range. It's so interesting. So using that rinsing quality of the exhale. And as you get the feel of the reach of that left arm, breathe. Okay. Now we've had this whole kind of side range work. So I'm going to change it up quite a bit, but we will still have, we're actually going to go balance back into this left side. if I get this correctly. So when we're lengthening through this left range of the waistband, you don't have to do a lot of technicality. You just have to lay onto your back side, right? So when you start to come around with that left arm, I want you to move your sand aside. Any direction is fine. And you're going to roll into your ribs and use that movement like you're pushing your ribs down into your bolster a bit so you can spread the back. Okay? Now that's a twist, right? You're starting to twist. So when you come up, we're going to move our bolster to the front of our mat. We're actually going to come up and slide in our blankets. How many times are we going to be told that we're coming up? We're going to slide in our blankets, and I want you to take a seat on top. All right. No cats have arrived in screens yet. Okay, come on up, and then when you're on two blankies, you're going to add the bolster at the front. Okay, so bend the right knee, place a ball or a block maybe under the knee. If your knee comes down to the floor and there's no issue with that, then don't use the ball or block. But I think it's helpful to have that as far as circulation support. Then it doesn't give you that mentality of I've got to get my knee onto the ground and then I'm a real poser. I'm doing the pose right. So you want to feel your left foot out to about 10, 11 o'clock, and your bolster is tilted up. Now, when you lean forward, notice if your left foot goes with you, even if it's sneaking a turn. Flex the left foot. Yeah, imagine like you have your belt around your hips and it's under your foot, and so you have to keep your foot responsible. Okay, so leaning into it. Breathe, so there's a forward motion. And now with the ribs arching, we're going to carefully bring the bolster back. Now, if you want to do a little bit of back and forth, that might feel like a decent hydrating motion for your levers. Your upper and lower levers are completely interactive at this point. The things we do to get lever interaction. Okay, now lower down the bolster lever and bring the left foot on top. Okay, so sand or no sand, completely up to you. If I put a sandbag on the left thigh, the top of it, it's kind of interesting for me in the balance of my pelvis. So if you have two sandbags, you put one on each leg. And then as I move forward, I'm going to find my blocks and I'm going to take them to besides my bolster and yeah, feel where there's a little bit of squeeze around maybe the hip central. Maybe the legs feel some intertwined pulling patterns, right? So they're kind of weaving around the bands of the leg. So this is all, I think it's going to be an interesting session as we kind of build into it. Thank goodness we can change these up. There's no rule book, right? It's got to be page 8 we're doing today. But when you lean forwards, I want you to let your back find a medium balance of arching and rounding. So where does that live for you with the weight of your head? Yeah, feel that the head's weight is part of supporting your neck rhythm. All right, so that's important to notice. It's not to discipline and be sad that your head is down, right? Or that it's a bad posturing judgment, but feel that you can use this position with your arms steady and strong to lengthen your whole back line all the way into your neck. Breathing. Now the lungs feel different this way. a little more Vader breathing when you're forward. So then slide your blocks or don't. You can come up with your hands on your knees probably easily enough. And then we'll take a twist to our left. Now, I like a block behind me to have my hand on. Some like the block low, some don't want to block, and it's not necessary for their reach because their hand comes to the floor. So utilize that block, and you might kind of play with it if you are using it. Do you have the block narrow? Do you have it wide? What seems to be the appropriate way not to be so needy for it, right? It's just there to anchor you. And then when you are turning, that looks great. When you are having that rotation, keep the right inner thigh open, right? So it's not trying to pull up. If the sand doesn't feel good on your left leg, you can always put it over to the right. Okay, but I want us to get some circulation between the vertebral discs, right? Imbibition, right? Getting some hydration. So not so much retention and drying up in that space. No dry spines. And now come back center, and then as we go between the sides, let's just have a moment where we let both legs carefully sand away, move, open. Okay, bolster up. Knees can bend with the bottoms of the feet on the floor, or you can have the legs straight. Okay, lean forward. What direction is better for me, right? I'm going to go with the feet down, knees up. It seems better in my lower back and my mid back. If my legs were straight, I could definitely go forward, but then the back of my knees are starting to curve into the ground. So it's really going to be up to your, if you have pretty stiff legs, this is probably the better option, right? To have them lengthening out, but it's harder, right? You're not going to get into hyperextension likely. But if you bend the knees, I want you to let the back to extend and spread the circulation in the lower back to reach through the pelvis. Not tiptoe through the pelvis, but reach through. Okay, breathing. Head lowers down between the arms. I know it's tempting to kind of sink and get like the most reach of your arms. So you have to kind of take a breath and back off on intensity or striving mentality sometimes. And then as you come up, you're going to switch the leg part with this. Left knee bends, maybe a block, maybe a ball below it, or maybe nothing. And then you're going to lower your bolster. We'll go right into it, right foot on top of the bolster. And then as you sand up, right thigh, or you can go both if you've got two or a couple bags of rice, or go fetch a bag of rice and add another one today. And lean forward. Fetch a cat. I'm amazed this kitten has not really stirred much at all. She's mimicking the other cats. She's learning the craft of catness. Okay, now when you are leaning, does your knee notice? I mean, are you really noticing your knee? Particularly external rotation might not be the noticer for you. So this is possibly helpful for some of us. For some, it might be too much. So don't go so far forward if it's starting to bother your knee. You can bring your blocks in closer and lean to work on your hip. And now turn right. So we're going to bring the left hand to the right knee, take a block back behind you. Now, most of our seated spinal spirals, we have the sand on the base leg, right? Not the lifted crossover leg. But it's interesting when you change it up every, once a year or something like that. And I know it's been almost a year here. So you might go, wow, that feels kind of good, right? It's helping your stomach muscles have some sense of, oh, I'm strong, I'm sturdy. So just change it up with the sand sometimes. See what is a good inner balance. And if you have a suggestion to the group, you can always offer it. So feel that rotation, be cautious on the kind of the ego momentum to use the arm to pull you around. Try to use the breath subtlety to exhale you to twist. We all use our arms to get there here, to get to the turn. Now, can you move out of your back here? So you're going to let the chest lift, slide the block over besides your bolster, and then simply bring both hands to the bolster now, down the sides or to the floor if your arms are really long. And I want you to get a feeling just here, centering up. And then you're going to move the sand away and collect your consciousness here in this whole front kind of inner rim of the pelvis and the inner rims of the leg. And then as you take out that right leg, off the bolster that is, you're going to move your bolster forward quite far to the front of your mat or the foot of your mat. And then take your legs to rest on top. That sounds like a decent thing for my legs. Take a blanket away and we're going to lower on our back. Goody, goody. Okay, with our blankie maybe under your head. It's going to be bridge time. So if you're ready for the neck to be without a blanket, you can pass on that. Add a ball or block between the knees. Either's fine. Okay, I'm not going to say one is better than the other. It's whatever you prefer. But feel where that is closer to the inside line of like the knee bones. Okay, so if I have the ball or block closer on the inner thigh tissue, it'll feel different for your harmony in your back muscles and the back of the legs. So plant your feet on your bolster. If you need to get it closer, get it in. You can always push it away. It's more of a strain if you have it too far out to start for your knees. You can always push it out, but if it's too far out to start, it could be potential problems. And then my hands are just perked up on my legs. My elbows are kind of satisfied, just resting open. Push down into your feet and then slowly lift up about maybe a few inches. And notice your neck, right? If you can roll your head side to side. Now, if it feels really comfortable here and you don't want to get rid of your blanket, keep it. But if you're noticing that there's a little bit more flexing of that neck and you can't quite rest it back, let go of the blanket, just slide it out. You want to be able to rest your head. And then slowly pick up the lift of the hips. Now you might put your hands on the sides and just notice, are they moving up on their own or do I have to like really grit to get them to move? So lift up to a bridge pose. Okay. And then slip a block, sneak a block on its mid setting under your pelvis. If you get to push the block under and you notice it's not fitting, just doesn't fit, your back is tired, turn the block lower and then slide it under. So if it's not meant to be, if I try to slide this under and it's just too tight of a fit, then I'll turn it to the other direction. But I want to just wedge that block so it's under the back of my pelvis and then relax my pelvis on the block. Okay, so feel how that is basically giving some slack into the back. So feel the feet on the bolster comfortably now. They're barely pushing down. Squeeze into the block or ball, and then let that widening occur at the back. It's going to widen and span. Okay, now this is a choice for you. Your arms could be stretching down and open. Most bridge poses will follow the arms down in a technical bridge pose versus we do drawbridge often, but we're going to be just a little technical on it today, just for technique's sake. Arms are a little more downwards, right? Down towards the foot of your mat. And then feel if you can actually bring them in a little closer and roll one shoulder down and in, the other shoulder down and in. When you anticipate getting a pose, you might try to get them both under and get it. But when you have your clothes on, it's a little tricky. They slide and slip around. So yeah, you don't have to take everything off at the top so you can get the pose right, but get a feeling of the shoulders back. And then notice, is this good for your neck? This is a good neck check, right? If your chin is a little bit up, you're gonna wanna try to slide back so your neck is long. So you have a little bit of feeling your chest moving to your chin. Okay, now I want you to reach your hands farther down towards the bolster, not towards each other. Roll the shoulders down and in, and then push down into your feet, just the feet, not the ball actually pushing into right now, and lift the hips up. So you're a little bit higher in your bridge pose. Slide the block away. Okay, and lower your spine down. Ease the back. Push your feet down into the bolster. Ease the spine down. Okay, find that collective balance that moves all the way down through the spine. Okay, keeping the spine long. We're not tucking knees into chest yet. That shocks the sacrum a bit, so we want to keep the back bending going. So push down to your feet. If you need to bring your knees in and lift the feet for a second to get that actual energy to do that or some drive, go for that. And then amp back down, turn up the volume again. You're pushing down to your feet and maybe lift a little bit lower this time. Maybe don't go as high on the shoulder blades. Maybe go higher on the shoulder blades. Bring your arms overhead if you like that. If you don't subscribe to that, then don't worry about it today. You can keep your arms downwards. Okay. So now if I move my arms overhead, I get a little more circulation up to my shoulder blades, but then I don't want my blanket at all at that point. So I want you to sample drawbridge, which is lifting and lowering the hips with or without your blanket. Possibly keep the ball or the block between the knees and squeeze that object between the knees each time you lift up your hips, okay? And then as you lower down your spine, focus on lowering down the weight between each vertebral spot. So spacing in the spine. Okay, then let your body center before you come back up. And we'll do one more. Okay. So if it's noticeably helpful to have no blanket, just feel what that's about for your neck. And then as you lower your spine, we're going to bring the spine, the hips. If you have the blanket behind you, I want you to slide it back under your head, low blanket, and then bring your knees to your chest and take the ball or block out and cross the right foot up to the left knee and then hold the back of the left thigh. 2 pose options. Okay, reclining pigeon pose. There's no block under your back. I suppose you could do this pose with a block under your back. I haven't given that an honest try. And if you want to get a little more inner thigh support on this one, I would like you to start this pose by pushing a block on the inside of that right thigh first. So I'm giving you, I guess I gave the instruction backwards, but those of you that find that that pose we just did is just, you just can't get it. It's like your knee keeps going to your shoulder and it just keeps going in and in and in. So you might start with a block and try to palpate the inner thigh with that block. Palpate it. So you're pushing the skin and you're trying to slide it towards the knee. All right, trying to open up that inner thigh, which is connected, obviously, top of the thigh. and wrapping around. And then when you hold either below the left knee or back of the leg, feel awareness on the thigh, right thigh. And then let go of the knee or the thigh and then put that left foot down. Find your belt, it's somewhere, and place it under your right foot. And then as you lift up that right foot, I want you to move your right leg out and the left foot on the bolster in half of cobbler's pose. Okay? It's a half cobbler, half cob. So my right leg is out now. My left inner thigh doesn't have sand and I don't have any extra pressure there. The one thing you might offer your left leg would be a block under the exterior thigh, right? That would be probably pretty kind. And then as that right leg flows open, feel the body weight, the weight of the leg. It's probably even multiplies when you really let the foot go into the belt. Use your body weight to create flexibility. Left arm is anywhere. Could be just passive, doing time. Now let's come back up, and I want, for comparative sake, I want you to bring that left foot up into the belt and push the feet about hips distance apart, push straight up into the feet. Okay, there's no block under the pelvis, but push up. Keep the feet apart, important here. And then let the back of the pelvis center. And then bring your feet together. Ish, okay? Take the right foot out of the belt and replace it on the bolster and left leg out. We're going backwards on this side, I'm aware. Now, this is one where you might notice, wow, there's a block I left there, and maybe that feels good to support your leg on the block. So you could use a block on each side. I actually like this routine of movement. Kind of interesting on the hip flexor dynamic. This whole inner lining attachment to the knee. So with that left foot pushing a little bit, kind of notice what is the right harmony, what would be the most harmonious kind of tactic for you with activating muscles or letting them go. Letting them go would be the potential. You could utilize that for serving your body the best here. Belly moves with the breath. Now bending your left knee. Feel if you take this pose into the next pose by bending your left knee with the belt held and resistance. So I'm holding my belt with my left hand, but also my left bicep is toned. Okay, so now I want you to keep resistance, bring your left heel into the center, and then bring the right knee up to serve the left foot. It's in service. And then take a block and place it on the left inner thigh, and your right foot may be kind of spun a little bit, turned out. So you want to keep that right heel pushing a little into the bolster. Your block may be on this side. You want to palpate the inner thigh. Maybe you don't have interest in that and you really want more of the reclining pigeon time. Okay. So if this was a little more comfortable for you to go right into, then take this shape. If getting into the shape is, you feel a little discombobulated, period, then use the block on the inner thigh to massage those tissues. You know, when you do take the time to do that, even if you end up not pulling your leg in and massaging these the whole time, that's okay. So find what's the best. If these are very rigid responders to your block, then, you know, stay with one spot and just kind of move it a little side to side. See if you can get a little slack in the actual skin, tone the connective tissue. Interesting how rigid the skin can get. Trying to loosen it up. Okay, block massage. All right, so when you hold the back of the leg, if it's for a mini moment here, spine long. Okay, a few more. The nice thing about this pattern is I'm trying to link them. So this will be yet another link that we'll get into. So feel where the back is easing. Okay, and then uncross that left foot. And I want you to bring your props so that they're not so much side yard stuff. You don't have to get up and move everything, but you might move some things back closer to your upper body. And then we're going to take the, I didn't know where my bolster was, take the bolster over to the right side. You should probably almost always know where your bolster is. Huh? Take your bolster to the right side and let the right leg reach. And feel it actually reach through the heel. And the left leg crosses to the bolster. Ah. Okay, add a ball to the sacrum. You can also add a sandbag to the exterior left thigh. Or you could just take a moment and kind of feel. Maybe you don't want your blanket, maybe you love it and you want more of it underneath your head, closer to your shoulders. Maybe you want to get your left leg with some sand. Yeah, and if that left leg doesn't easily touch the bolster, I would slide the bolster higher up besides it. So you're able to feel when the sand gets along your side, you know, kind of, oh, it's a different feeling, right? The sand is really helping create this connectivity. And interestingly, that your leg affects so much of your back musculature. So it must mean that when I walk around, that's going to affect, you know, my center of gravity and how it feels in my pelvis and the back. So when the left arm is branching open, you might get something out of a block or a ball that's kind of tucked at the sacrum. Now, some people find that that is best to be closer to the tailbone. Some it's a little bit higher up, and some it's not really identifiable that it is at exact sacrum. So find where it kind of fits. Where does the ball fit? Or the block or the towel? Okay, and then when your left arm is open, roll your head to the left and span the chest and let your eyes relax. Right hand could be anywhere. It could be relaxed beside you. It could be on your sandbag. You might get lucky and be able to kind of find a way to loop it with your sandbag handle a little bit and get that reach with the arm. And interesting to play with that and see what would that do. That's good. It doesn't have to be just like this. It could be just getting the arm to stretch a little bit, connected to the traction. You know, with the connection of your center, deciding where your arms are best to meet your body's needs of twisting, right? We want to create that twist with a relaxed abdomen. Feel the elasticity of the mid-chamber. Strengthening with that intra-abdominal pressure. I feel the intra-abdominal pressure when I twist. So that's going to put pressure on the diaphragm. Strengthening. So you're going to have a little bit of resistance in the diaphragm when you twist. Okay, now good. Let's keep this for a few more moments. Those of you that get antsy to get out, you might take a direct route out on your own, maybe windshield wiper the legs, give it a little extra time for that easing of your back, or some will pull the knees to the chest. So you have a few different options in between. Okay, so if I move my sand, knowing you could be here longer if this is feeling like, you know, true, pure, potent medicine for you, you could stay a little longer. But then when you do decide to come out, where do you need that continual support? Maybe you feel this left side of the leg starting to lengthen, and that almost radiates into your, well, your hip, your back. Even if you don't notice mentally, your brain doesn't take a check next to the back. It is sweeping through the back of the lungs. Okay, so I like to move the ball and then windshield wiper the knees. So slide my right foot up and then just continue that supportive angling of my thigh. So my bolster's a little in the way. I'm going to kind of nudge it. I know it's going to go to the other side soon, but they're pretty easy to kind of push away. They're getting used to being pushed on. Okay, so take a few more of these windshield wipers, or clutch the knees to your chest if your back just craves that. Clutch your knees to your chest. You can do happy baby pose. Clutch your knees, hold the back of your thighs, swing your feet up. Okay, so in between sides, you're going to be free-forming, and then start to move your bolster to the left, and then angle yourself on your prop so you are feeling like you have your left leg down and straight-ish, and your right leg cross over, wishing for a bolster. Okay, so feel where the right thigh is, and then feeling that kind of crossover, how much you put weight on your left hip, and then when you add the ball, you want to find that there's an anchor where you kind of push back to the ball a little bit. So your stomach, especially this lower part of the tummy, the lower intra-abdominal pressure, where the stomach is kind of, I don't know, when you move your belly organs and so forth, you might find that's pretty dormant as far as its ability to capture movement and strength. Low belly. And it might be more for those of us that have had any like surgery in that space. Maybe that's kind of why it gets sleepy too. That is a reasoning for that. But also even more a reasoning to try to exercise the movement of the twist low. So this is why the ball I find to be helpful personally, because that kind of helps me kind of sink back and then adjust and brings up some seed of hope and strength in that lower core. Okay, sand is on perhaps for some of us. Right arm is open. You decide. And then left arm is anywhere it wants to be. I didn't find having my hand in that handle was really a helpful idea in the long run for my shoulder muscles, but you might like it. So the left leg can be long, it can bend. Yeah, you can shift it around if you're trying to figure out where your momentum is in your hip. So feel the chest open, feel your head turn to the right, and simply motion through the belly. Yeah, feel if your right leg is pressing into the bolster, or if it's flowing over and kind of lying on the bolster. That's what we're trying to get it to do. Flow over, and then it just lies onto it. An honest twist. Feel where your neck turns to the right. And now as you craft the movement quality of the core body with the breathing, now on this side, we're going to actually come out of it by being through our side, okay? So take the ball, slide it away if you have a ball or block or anything wedged at the sacrum. Feel this is kind of a continuation of loosening up that back, even the leg. And then as you slide your sand off, you're going to rotate. And I want you to actually move your bolster. Obviously, it's going to be in the way. And you're going to roll to that left side. And then when you come up, take your blanket in. So it's center-ish of your mat. And then you're going to bring your hips. So it's kind of like you're setting up for side sage, but you're sneaking into a different shape. But you're going to move your bolster straight in front. And you're going to lengthen. So this is all friendly enough on the knees, right? You're going to lengthen over that bolster. And now you've gone from your back all of a sudden to your front. Somehow you flip to the other side. And your hands are lining up, so they're underneath your shoulder-ish zone. Shoulder-ish is not an actual bone, but it is related. So when we feel the legs back, noticing when you lift up your ribs, you get to kind of advise your back on how much intensity you want in this back bend. We're going into a posterior core strength and a back bend where we're really strengthening away from the floor. Okay, so feel your feet a little wider than hips distance, kind of the knees are apart. Now, when you bring your hands forwards, you're going to lift up your chest, kind of like tummy time, if you've ever observed infants trying to move along, right? This is that gesture that is in the beginning wave of movement. So you're kind of radiating out from your center. It seems like a reasonable way to try to get going. It's not as much strain as if the hands are under you. You really pretty much rarely see that right under the shoulders. It's in the front. Kind of like starfish radiating out from the center. And then as you lower down your chest, chin to chest, inhale, belly full of bolster. And then exhale, reach your hands forward and lift up. Okay. Now, lower down your chest, elbows down to Sphinx pose. That's kind of a nice relief for your upper back and your shoulder blades. Elbows are down. Now, when you lift up your feet, now some of us, the blanket might be perfect. Mine, it's a little bit not on the right spot for my knees, but the nice thing, it happens to just not really be under my knee. So you have that elevation of your thigh without you having to lift it up right now. So it's already getting a little stretch. So feel your heels as if they're trying to drop towards your seat. And rather than trying to check out, did they get there? Are they even going? Or are they kind of, unhinged at it, right? Sometimes you just can't get your feet very close to the seat on their own. So I want you to lengthen forward so you're reaching your ribs front. It's a pretty intense back strengthening pose. These are called baby back bends. And then when you bring your feet back, because baby back bends, it makes sense. Baby do these kind of back bends. Toes are under, slide the hands back, and then when you lengthen into up dog, inhale. And then as you exhale, come back, either to child's pose or a semi-child's pose. Forehead down. Okay, now when you come up to table, I want you to turn your bolster across and then round your back, chin in, cat pose. And then as you bring your tail back, toes under, lift your knees into downward dog, heels towards the floor. Now, as best as you can get your heels towards the ground, you could step them wider. You could bring them closer in. If it's not friendly for your wrists, right, you can move your bolster away and bring your elbows down. right? So if you're not sure, what do I do? You come down to your knees, bring your elbows down and lift up your knees and be in a forearm dog pose. This is oftentimes called dolphin pose. Okay. So for all of us in this pattern, we're going to actually walk our hands and our feet towards each other and meet in standing forward bend. Okay, so inversion. Head goes down. Now, if you're a little bit wary of the descent of the brain and the blood pressure, I would recommend that you have your feet a little wider than hips distance. Your knees are certainly bending that way. And then your head lowers down from the spine. Now, can you lengthen the back of the legs? Let the weight of your head lower down, and then hold the elbows. So with the elbows creating traction for your back. Good. Yes, keep with that ideal pattern of traction, weight of the head stretching through your back. That sentence doesn't make very much sense, but sometimes we don't make sense. The weight of your head stretching through your back. Not a common sense comment. So feel where your knees are blending into bending and that release in your back. And I want us to weave this into a wide stance. So kind of make your way to a wide stance. This is how I want us to try this. Is our hands will lower, and you're going to probably get your bolster to kind of help you get about, 1/4 of the way up. Now you're going to turn to your left and then take your feet into this wide stance. You're going to want one block, maybe if you can finagle two to get in front of you under your hands. And then place the block so that they are a little closer than shoulder width and your seat reaches back. So you might push your feet a little farther back. There you go, on your mat. You don't want to fall off your mat, but get a feel of that reach of the toes turning in and the hips stretching back and the thighs trying to grip up. Okay, so I'll kind of observe this in myself, but also some of you. Thing to notice here is that we are trying to drop the kneecaps, kind of pulling up, sucking up the quadricep muscle. So you're going to feel, if you look back at your knees, that, everything kind of pulls up right at the top of the knee. So if that is causing a lot of stretch in the back of your leg, and it's too much, then you walk your feet in. And maybe a lot isn't bad, but too much is not where we want. And feel the toes in, the heels out, and then let your hips stretch back and walk your hands far enough forward that your arms can stretch front and your head can be between your arms. So you're down with your upper body stretching fully. And then the legs don't have to focus so much on kneecap drawing up, right? You don't have to have that drawstring at the kneecap. You can certainly feel that pull of the back of the legs. Good. Now, as you bring your weight forward from this drinking giraffe pose, take the blocks in close as could be. And then as you turn the right foot front, I hope you got maybe a bolster under you. It will be helpful to have soon. You're going to turn to your right foot and pivot carefully on both of those feet so that you can really enjoy having a sticky mat on this one. The feet are turning parallel. And I've got the back calf stretching deeply. So my left heel is reaching to the floor. My blocks could go up higher. I'm a fan of having a little more proppage for my hip balance, because otherwise I get kind of swung forward on my right leg. So use the props, the blocks actually, maybe farther back towards your leg so that you can get that left calf to stretch. As I just know you love to stretch your calf. I find that to be the mystery musculature that you don't know how much it needs it until you're there. and it's kind of magnified. And feel the heels, and then feel if your right foot can slide a little bit forward. We're not coming into the splits, but notice the weight percentage on your legs. Now the right knee, if it's kind of bowing out, try to get that leg right in center, forward from the hip, and then bend it. And I want the knee just above the ankle and slide the left foot farther back so you're in a lunge. Your back knee could be on the blanket. You could keep it up, but try to keep the front of the back thigh lengthening. So that's at the balance of the right knee above the ankle. Yeah, you could spring off the ball of the left foot so you get a little bit more pizzazz in it. You know, it has a little more intrigue if you can keep the toes under on the back foot. Some of you might really get more out of the knee down though, but probably on a blanket. Breathe. Now noticing the kind of the yang quality on this one. So when I step the left foot and I go right into changing sides because I don't want to grip up my hip, I'm going to reach that right foot back and then try to get the heel down to start. So the left leg is straight versus bending forward over the knee. And we take the time to get to that second side. And we get that feel of the waist and the reach back through the heel. Good. Lengthen through that right heel. Feel the padding of the right foot, and then as you lift up that heel, if you want to, let's say you want to do more calf work, you could stay here, of course, okay? But if you're going to add a little bit of that hip flexor, you're going to bend through the left knee and slide the right foot farther back and stay with that high lunge. Now the back knee can lower down. Right, you could put it on your blanket, and it might feel really nice to have that length in the quadricep. Okay, I'm going to give an offering of adding pigeon to the practice today. If you are opposed to pigeon, you'll be in a longer inversion is what will happen for you. So I want to give everybody kind of that acknowledging where you're at with that part of your practice. So we're getting towards that final spinal. So some of us might want to be upside down longer than hip induced. So take that lunge that you have on that right thigh behind you, the reach of the thigh, the left knee is in the lunge. You're going to start to lower the the right knee down. And when I take the blocks out, I'm going to walk the left foot, toe heel the foot to the right side of my mat. So whether I'm going to pigeon or not, I've got to get on my bolster somehow, right? So this is one opportunity. Now, when I do that, I want this side, you don't have to get so oriented to touching your leg and rubbing it back and forth, but you do want this whole side strip to get some awareness here. So when I put my knee down, I'm using this bolster to magnify that stretch through that side of the leg. Oh, heck, we'll do pigeon. Those of you that are opposed to pigeon, come into legs up, feet up, sandy feet now. Okay, those that want to go pigeon passerbys. But those of us that are in it now, we might kind of immerse for a few. Remember, you want to lower down on your elbows versus trying to pull yourself back in this version, right? So trying to lean in and feel that left hip. So the bolster makes it a little more elementary, but I find it's a little more dense for me in the hip. You can come into the reach of your right leg by letting your right top foot relax. Maybe not trying to get it so ignited into the left hip that way. Feel what body weight does for your circulation. This is when it's good, right? When you can use the defined weight to support this, inducing the circulation in your hip. So switching sides. Now, you can switch it a few ways. Most all of us are going to bring our leg forward, right? And switch this way, right? So most all of us will go that way. Suppose you could switch turning backwards. I haven't really tried that before. Maybe another day. Okay, so right knee positions open and then lowered down. Now, if you've had it with the pigeon project, okay, and you're ready to come onto your back, go ahead and center in the center of your bolster and lie back. Have your blanket under your head though, so you have support. We'll all join you there in a moment. But get a feel of the weight of your right thigh. For those of us in pigeon, notice when you didn't walk into the pigeon pose, it's a little bit different versus kind of sliding your foot across. You get a different length. So you might end up kind of lifting your hips and just kind of get a feel for moving your knee forward and back. And anything that can work on this side flush versus right at the kneecap, right? Try to get this whole swath of the side. The lateral rotators, right? The IT band, but really more the TFL is what you're kind of invigorating here. So just kind of play with those places that get kind of snagged up and you don't know there until you get there. Few more moments. Hip fresheners. Okay, now I think the best inversion we could do would be actually at the wall. So if you want to do in the middle of the room and you don't want to go to wall space or couch with your legs up over that, that's fine. So we're going to take the left leg forward. Now, if you're here, you're going to roll back, feet up. That's an idea. I love the wall. It's just a little bit more of an inversion, right? You're getting more out of it. And the total quality of directional flow in your body is just more certain, right? When you're in the middle of the room, it's good. We do it a lot, but it's if you can use a wall, you're at home space. You don't have to go through the studio and find a wall space with our neighbors. This is ideal, I think. So in your space, you've got a sandbag, a bolster, and a blanket. You've got your bolster right up at the wall, and you're going to sit at the edge, and I hope you got space enough to swing the legs up. So you got to find your rear to be close-ish to the wall, not required that it's at the wall. In fact, some like to have that space between the bolster and the wall for their rear. If you're going to use a couch or a chair or a bed to put your legs up on, that's fine. Or you could do legs up in the middle of the room with your sand on your feet too. So as you take the balancing pattern of an inversion, you want the weight of your abdominal organs to basically feel like they're motioning towards your diaphragm, right? So I'm going to use the sand to help encourage that distribution of weight, right? So even if it seems to be a common thread for most of you to utilize your wall for your feet, it's also helping that circulation into the pelvic floor. So with the back of the pelvis, let's let it rest today versus trying to push down into the tailbone. Let it just absorb that circulation. Do any shifting and fidgeting that's good for your equilibrium. Maybe that's what fidgeting's for. A dose of equilibrium. And bring your elbows back out to cactus. And rest the eyes, removing any hardware that may be on your eyes for a few moments. And balance the wave of the in and the out breath. feeling that natural pulse of the belly. And as it lifts, explore that strength into the diaphragm, but also the ease of the exhalation when you're upside down. It's easeful to have a longer exhale when you're inverted, which calms the nervous system, lowers the heart rate, the blood pressure, inflammation, right? All these different factors. Internally, it's helpful and heals. So just without rationalizing and making the properties of human, right, notes and maybe judgment about this or that pose, just be and feel the breath. Now feel where there is motion in your lower core. Feel the patterns of movement of the core body. Completely unique to your daily habit, likely when you're standing, right? When you're inverted, right? The diaphragm is flowing towards the heart here. So it's easeful for the breathing muscles. So it's okay to be easeful. And as you bring your feet a little bit away from the wall space, bend your knees, and then feel when the knees bend and the patterns of balance that are required in your feet. And you might watch out for your hands, but you can bring your sand overhead. If you put any glasses nearby, you want to be careful that those aren't near the sand. And then as you apply your feet together or your knees together, you choose, take a mini moment just to balance where the length is of your spine. It's elevated. It's also the spine that's getting this nourishment right now. It's kind of a body nutrition. Okay. And as the legs are gathered here, you're going to roll, and we'll gather for a few moments in sitting quietude. So taking a blanket or a bolster or sitting with your back to the wall or wherever you happen to have been inverted. Let your spine find a line up, and then feeling where that line of energy is from your back musculature into your shoulder, and the shoulders kind of branch around. And then as you bring the shoulders around to branch, reach your hands around towards your back. Give yourself a bit of a hug here. So feel that spread of the blades. And go each side. If your neck feels comfortable, keep it simply set where it's at, where the neck seems to have been set. Unite your hands, bowing the brain down to your heart center. And we surrender here at the space behind our heart, gathering our breath together, breathing in wellness for yourself and steering that consciousness out to others. Inhale. And with exhalations, bowing into your heart. Gratitude. Namaste. Okay. Thank you.